Thanks for joining us here on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Alicia Lewis. Let's get to your headlines this morning. Right now, the polls are open in Roseville and Shoreview for a special election that will determine the balance of power at the state capitol. Audrey Russo gives us a look at what's on the ballot.
Voters in Roseville and Shoreview have been waiting for months to make this decision. They've watched the stakes of this election grow over the past couple of months, and what they decide today could either balance power in the House or cement a Republican majority. Republican Paul Wickstrom and DFL candidate David Gottfried are on the ballot. It's important to note that the balance of power in the House won't change overnight. If DFL candidate David Gottfried wins, party leaders tell KARE 11 the earliest he would be seated is March 17th. So Republicans will hold a majority for the rest of the week. The power sharing agreement would then kick in once he's seated. Now, if Republican candidate Paul Wickstrom wins, the GOP would reach that 68 members needed to pass legislation off of the floor. Right now, the GOP has 67 members to the DFL's 66. And polls are open until 8 p.m. tonight. Back to you.
A look from our nation's capital this morning, where today House lawmakers could vote on a bill to keep the government open. Right now, the federal government only has enough money to stay open until 10:59 this Friday night. The bill would cut about $13 billion in domestic spending and adds money for defense and immigration and customs enforcement. Democrats and one Republican are opposing the plan. A few other House GOP members are still up in the air. Ahead of today's possible vote, Vice President J.D. Vance will meet with Republicans at 8 o'clock this morning. Wall Street is still grappling with President Trump's chaotic trade actions against allies and adversaries. Monday was the worst day for the U.S. market so far this year. With more Trump tariffs set to go into effect tomorrow and the government funding deadline looming Friday, it could be a really rough day today. The White House is insisting, though, that the pain is going to be worth it. NBC's Alice Barr has the latest from Washington.
Hi there. Shortly after the stock market closed down on Monday with all the gains so far this year erased, the White House looked to reassure with a statement saying that President Trump will repeat what it called historic job, wage, and investment growth from his first term. After a rough day on Wall Street, with investors selling off stocks over fears a Trump trade war could tip the country into a recession, the White House downplaying what it called the animal spirits of the stock market, putting out a list of 50 wins in 50 days and pointing to business leader support. That, as President Trump on Sunday did not rule out a recession this year.
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition.
Later adding,
we're going to take in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to become so rich.
After the president hit top trading partners with new tariffs, China striking back with its own tariffs on U.S. agriculture products, everything from chicken, wheat, and corn to soybeans.
You're going to have a lot of farms that go out of business and aren't able to continue on the current trajectory.
Canada issuing retaliatory tariffs, and now the province of Ontario hiking electric rates for 1.5 million Americans who rely on Canadian power exports.
If the United States escalates, I will not hesitate to shut the electricity off completely.
On Capitol Hill, lawmakers sparring over the Trump administration's policies.
Donald Trump and House Republicans are crashing the economy and hurting hard-working American families.
I believe that the policies that we're putting forth are going to improve the economy and bring down costs for people. It takes a little while.
That as lawmakers work to pass a funding bill by Friday to prevent a government shutdown that would only add to economic uncertainty. A short-term government funding bill made it out of committee last night, with the full House expected to vote on it later today. The Senate is the even bigger challenge. That's where 7 Democrats would have to get on board, many voicing opposition and looking to flex whatever political muscle they can in the face of all these rapid changes from the Trump administration. In Washington, I'm Alice Barr. Back to you.
I'm Mariah Katane. We're about 24 hours away from another round of tariffs being implemented. This time, it's a 25% tax on all steel and aluminum coming into the U.S. This comes as economists are warning of a potential recession as U.S. stocks plunged on Monday. An economics professor from the University of St. Thomas says it's hard to predict if we are approaching a recession, and mixed signals like more jobs but less consumer spending are adding to the uncertainty. Professor Tyler Schipper says one area of concern is consumer spending. People are spending less money, which means less economic growth. Top economists have increased their odds that a recession may happen in the next several months. Goldman Sachs says there's now a 20% chance we could enter into a recession this year.
Happening right now, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, part of a key summit in Saudi Arabia with representatives from Ukraine, including President Volodymyr Zelensky. Right now, Zelensky trying to repair relations with the United States after a disastrous Oval Office meeting that ended without a deal for security from U.S. forces. And this all comes after some of the most intense attacks from Ukraine yet in the ongoing war with Russia. Keir Simmons has the latest.
A massive drone strike on Moscow this morning, leaving a trail of destruction in residential areas. Ukraine's largest ever on Moscow, local officials say, after escalating Russian attacks inside Ukraine, continuing overnight. War remains the only way Ukraine and the Kremlin talk to each other, even as President Trump pushes for peace. This morning, US and Ukrainian delegations locked in negotiations in Saudi Arabia, including over a possible minerals deal. The Saudi Crown Prince helping mediate, hosting President Zelensky on Monday, and separately Secretary Rubio. In a post overnight, Zelensky saying he discussed the return of children held in Russia and security guarantees, the vexed issue that fueled his fight in the Oval Office.
You're gambling with World War III.
Ukraine trying to repair the damage today, promising a clear vision to end the war with our American partners. Another complication, Elon Musk weighing in again, suggesting an outage on his platform X came from somewhere in Ukraine.
But there was a massive cyber attack to try to bring down the X system with IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area.
On the flight from Washington, Secretary Rubio managing expectations, including Ukraine's potential land concessions.
We have to understand the Ukrainian position and just have a general idea of what concessions they'd be willing to make, because you're not going to get a ceasefire and an end of this war unless both sides make concessions.
While this morning, Russia says separate, intensive bilateral talks are underway with Washington.
New video this morning of a school bus crash in Montvale, New Jersey that injured more than a dozen people. Investigators there say the bus was heading toward New York when it crashed, flipped onto its side and ended up in a ditch facing oncoming traffic. Police are saying overnight that the driver sustained moderate injuries. A juvenile passenger was seriously injured and 13 other juveniles also hurt. Right now, New Jersey State Police are investigating what caused the crash. Developing right now, a deadly crash investigation happening on Highway 10 in Big Lake. The road is back open this morning after being shut down for hours overnight. The crash happened just after 11 last night between Big Lake and Becker, which is about 45 minutes northwest of the Twin Cities. State Patrol tells us that the Sherburne County Sheriff's Office was trying to stop a motorcycle when it crashed into a truck. Here's video from around midnight. You can see what appears to be smoke billowing from where you can also see several emergency vehicle lights. We have reached out to State Patrol to try to get some more information about who was involved. Well, as your kids are getting out of school today, their teachers may be heading to the Minneapolis Public School Board meeting to protest proposed cuts to special education. The district is working to recover from a nearly $110 million budget deficit. An MPS special education teacher tells us that includes $15 million from their program and loss of positions. The proposed budget is being voted on this June. All right, travelers, listen up to this one. Southwest Airlines is ending one of its biggest perks, free checked bags. This isn't great news. The airline just announced it's going to start charging for flyers' first and second checked bags starting March 28th. However, members of Southwest's A-List loyalty program or those traveling in business class are exempt from these fees. It comes just months after Southwest ditched another one of its policies that separated it from other airlines, the open seating policy. All right, stick with us. More news and weather is coming up right after the break.